Shalom Aleichem. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon. Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov. Welcome to those who are joining us here live on the Zoom, to those who are joining us on the Chabad.org Facebook page, those who are joining us and watching this at a later point in time. Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov. Today we celebrate the culmination, the conclusion, the Siyum of book number 13. And we venture forth looking forward to the Siyum on Bay's ear, God willing, where all of us will conclude the final and 14th book of the Rambam. And might I add that from here on end, if you will, the Rambam gives us an easier ride, if you will. This 14th book is both fascinating and easier. The halachos are much easier. The chapters are shorter. It takes us right down to the beginning of the Rambam that also has halachos that are perhaps a little easier for us to understand the first few books of the Rambam. So those of us who are jumping on board now, this is a perfect and opportune time to be able to jump on, to be able to strengthen each of our, in our own levels, our limud HaRambam, our study, our understanding of the Rambam. Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov. We are today honored to have with us Dayan Raskin, the senior Dayan in London, England, of the Chabad community, not only within London, England, but around the world. His Shiurim are, of course, many favorites of myself personally that I enjoy on the various websites and that I get to archive and look at on YouTube afterwards as well. So it is an honor. Thank you very much, Rabbi Dayan Raskin, for joining us here and allowing us some insight, a greater level of depth on Sefer Mishpatim.
Thank you, Rabbi Resnick. And
so, we read this in the Rambam, but I guess there are many major topics, and please, you'll head us in the direction that you would like to go. But I just like to open with, we're just finishing Nachlas now, laws of inheritance. Does this really practically relate nowadays? Do I actually have to give my oldest child double? Do I have to divide it accordingly? Do my daughters not inherit? God willing, this will be a mute conversation because very soon we will only have eternal life with the coming of Mashiach. But in the few moments that we have before that coming, can you perhaps address some of the practical applications and how they actually do apply in our lives today? Do they apply?
So, of course, Torah itself doesn't change. Life has changed. And possibly the family unit, who is the earner in the house, that kind of structure has changed probably very much the way it was in the years bygone, and therefore it's much more common now that people would make arrangements that that daughters would also get a similar share to what the sons would do. So that would involve making a tzavor. That would making a will, and by placing a will, that would be able to address that the daughters should also receive a fair portion. With now,
doesn't that sort of undermine?
Just 1 second. That what would normally be done is that a tzavor from a Yid will do a tzavor should go to a Jewish lawyer, a Purim lawyer, to be able to advise him what would be appropriate. But what would normally be done is that you'd stipulate in the will what's going to each of the family, etc. But then you'd leave some of your estate to be default. This let's say you'd say your library or some other stuff that is going to be left, not going to be included in the will. And therefore, it's going to, by default, fall back to the dinim of Yerusha, and then the dinim of Yerusha will apply. And in that part of the estate, the bechor will get double, and the boys will get, the daughters won't get. There can be, in other words, allocating something of the estate should be applicable to the laws of Yerusha with all the details, and the rest of you've made arrangements through the will.
And if there is no will that exists, a man passes away. So by Jewish law, can the children enforce say that the wife would not inherit at all, which is what we've sort of been learning, that they can leave their mother without, other than her basic ketubah, right? They leave her mother without anything. The daughters don't inherit anything. Would the default position be, would they be able to come to you as a dayan and say, there was no will, we want this done exactly the way the Torah says it, and that's the way it has to be?
Right. If you read more carefully, so long as the woman does not plan to remarry and to move out of the marital home, then she stays there indefinitely. So she is provided, she does not need to have to leave the house. and she's provided from the estate so long as she stays there. If she remarries, so she moves out, then she's going to her own devices. But so long as she decides to stay home, she's safe. So she's protected in that way. That's also part of the ksuba arrangements. It's only once she wants to go on her own way. Another very important point here is that why is it so important to do a tzavor in a halacha way? The civil will works very different to the halacha will, and that is that once a person is died, then the Yerusha has taken place. It's too late to start now saying it belongs to this one, belongs to that one. It's happened already. So whereas the civil will takes effect after death. So they are at loggerheads in a way, and therefore there are some poskim who say that a civil will not be recognized in halacha. There is such a view. However, I had this close to learn by Rabbi Heinrich Padve, Zechariah Levrocha, his shuvas are published under the name of Cheshav Ha'efet. He takes the view that the civil will be recognized in halacha under the grounds of mitzvah l'kayim divrei hames. It's certainly a declaration what his intent was, and
Rabbi, sorry, translate that in English.
That is a duty upon the heirs to fulfill the expressed wish of the deceased. And therefore, although technically you could argue, oh, well, it's too late, but there's no question that this has been the declared intent of the deceased, and that should be respected regardless. Now, I'd like to say another point over here, that I had an interesting discussion with a friend of mine recently, who was being in conversation with someone. Says it's not a chassidish thing to make a tzavor. Is making a will not chassidish? What I would say is, to be morbid and to be depressed is not chassidish, but to be to say that you're going to live forever is, I think, a bit stupid. And to take measures that when the time comes, that there should not be machlokas amongst the children, number one, or whatever other considerations, that's not a lack of chassidishkeit. It's not a lack, and it's actually hachacham ein bereishay. Let me just say, I often speak to talmidos, talking about why should a person get married. So one of I don't know whether there's a mocker in this, but my take on it is the following: we would all like to live forever. Lo yomos ki echye. I would like to live forever, although that's not practical. So we would like to see that our interests will continue after we are no longer here. So therefore, the chinuch, we have the nachas from our children who are following the ways of their parents. So then, in that way, I continue to live through them, and so on. So therefore, the greatest anxiety, I mean, that if you know that you're going to leave a Pandora's box, and there's going to be a whole big machlokas after you leave, then that's a tremendous agmas nefesh. On the contrary, if you can take steps that it should not happen by making a coherent tzavor, then in a way you are continuing to provide, even after you're no longer physically here. What I have on the screen here.
The fact that your wishes are not necessarily in sync with the way Torah divides that estate is in no way, that's not a contradiction. In other words, if I want my estate divided differently than God has assigned it, you're saying I can do that, and I can do God's will as well. I leave portion that's appropriated by Torah law, a portion that I appropriate, and that's not in any way a lack of my conviction and my connection and my commitment to Torah.
All right, it's no different to Mechiras Chametz and Pruzbul, etc., that we have mechanisms which are recognized in Torah. And there can be sometimes you can, amongst your children, you may see that one of them is more likely to provide for themselves, another one is less likely. And so therefore one needs more assistance than the other. So the fact that you're going to put in provisions for one more than the other, that may be sensible. Right? So as long as you leave, as I said, a portion of the estate for the Yerusha to evolve. I mean, you can give Matana Mechaim. Actually, there is a
Sorry,
letter of the Rebbe. A lot of the letters I'm taking here are from Shulchan Menachem, and there's a letter of the Rebbe about distributing your estate b'chaim. Let's say you've got $1 million and give each child $200,000 now. The Rebbe is not so keen on that actually, because it may actually be that doing that mechaim may actually be causing more trouble. So, lav dafka, but to sort it out in a way that you feel is the fairest.
I'm sorry. I just want to make sure I understand that clearly. You're saying that distributing your estate while I am still alive, to distributing my estate is not preferable. It should be done. It should be done in a form of a will afterwards. Before is that what you're saying?
That's what I saw in passing from a letter of the Rebbe, which is published in Shulchan Menachem. Something on those lines. It makes more sense to leave it for when the time comes. Whereas when it comes to tzedakah, it's the other way around. There's very strong letters of the Rebbe. Why leave your tzedakah till afterwards? Give it mechaim. But when it comes to distributing the estate amongst the children, it seems to be a little bit of an ambivalence about or a hesitation there.
Well, you allowed me an opening because you brought up the word prusbul, so that sort of can, if you don't mind, can we switch tracks here, Rabbi, and sort of move to another area of this book that we've just covered, which are the laws of interest and the laws of loans in general. Prusbul obviously is not specifically a heter iska, but a prusbul is sort of loans. And I don't know if we can. You surely get questions in terms of interest and loans and how that applies nowadays. So, is it okay? There is a mitzvah for me to lend money to somebody else. That is true, and I should do so without interest. But I want to get the interest, and we have a workaround, which now is perhaps not the forum to describe the specific workaround. Is that okay for me to just go ahead and lend you money with using the workaround and making that interest? I understand it's a halachic allowance, but is that okay for me to do, or should I actually make sure to lend without interest completely? And if you can sort of lend any anecdotes, any halachic insight that you might have into the laws of lending and interest, and anything that people can be careful about as they lead their day-to-day lives, that would be wonderful.
Okay. All right. So we're jumping ahead a bit. I guess I should have expected some surprises.
No, Rabbi, please. No problem.
Okay, fine. I'll just tell you a couple of points. Number one.
Please get you back on track. Whatever it is, we just have limited time constraints, and there's a big book to cover. But wherever you feel that you can be most insightful.
Number one, very, very common mistake is that you ask someone else, I maxed out my credit card. Can I use your credit card? And I'll pay you tomorrow, whatever, next week. And it comes months and months and months, and you haven't. And so someone's incurred charges, interest, because you've used their card. And morally, you feel very bad, and you feel that you should be able to reimburse them. And that's a big problem, because they borrowed from you. What you have to pay the bank is irrelevant to your fellow Jew who's borrowing from you, and that they cannot reimburse you. That's one thing. Now, as far as using a heter iska, now you have to be careful. The heter iska is basically that the lender is no longer a lender, but he is a shareholder in your business, and therefore is entitled to have a cut of the profits of your business. That's the ruse. That's the now. It's all very well if you are going into business and you're taking a loan, fine, and there's someone's going to get the lender will get a share in your profits. What if you are Malamed who's making a chasana, and you need to have $15,000? Which business are you investing it in? In what? Where's the business? So that and then you take
a new couple that's going to be able to create much dividends.
Yes, yeah. So I'm saying there it becomes a bit tenuous when there's no business venture. So some say, all right, you have assets. If I wouldn't borrow the money, so then I'd have to sell my house, I'd have to sell my car, and that would be less profitable than borrowing. And therefore you're lending money, you're investing in my property, not selling it, and that's the profit. That's the interest. What happens if it's a man who doesn't have a car, who doesn't own a house? So where is the iska? Where is the? No, that's the hesitation. I do heter iska is good for business, not for everything else. Another point is, Siyum, the Rebbe was personally hesitant to use a heter iska, and there are a couple of letters in the Igros Kodesh where the Rebbe took exception to the fact that there was a loan taken for a Chabad interest. Sorry for the pun. Under heter iska, and he says, because I am also kind of involved in this thing, and therefore, and the Rabbeim didn't go for heter iska so easily, possibly because of those hesitations.
What does that mean? Because the name Chabad is being used? Is that what you mean?
It was. I don't remember the details. It was a moisid under the Rebbe, and the Rebbe was, of course, hesitant. I don't remember how close the control was to the Rebbe personally, but the Rebbe was not happy that a heter iska had been taken, and possibly for the reasons I just mentioned. There was no business there. It was there's no income being generated, so why should there be a share of the
So can I just on a practical level, I borrow, hey, can you buy me a Coke? It's $2.50 in the airport, and I pull out a $3 and say, here, I'm paying you back $3, keep the change. Is that prohibited?
No, that's not a problem. Again, someone is asking you to buy a coat. Is that what you said? A Coke?
A Coca-Cola. I'm sorry, a bottle of water. Can you borrow a bottle? You buy a bottle of water from me? Yeah. And the person pays $1.50 for it, and you say, "Thank you so much. Here's $2. Keep the change."
That's no problem. There was no loan, and I'm allowed to charge 50 cents for the effort of going to the bar and waiting for it. I'm allowed to make money on that. That's okay.
So back and forth when kids in school sort of, hey, can you buy my lunch? I need something in the soda machine. My child is saying he needs something. I tell him, oh, you have to pay him back. You have to give him that. That's okay.
You're allowed to reimburse for effort. That's not a problem. That's okay. But when they start saying, well, you owe me money, and now it's been 2 days ago or a week ago, now it's going to be more because you're paying late, that is straightforward ribis.
Can I ask one more and this I know is a question that's discussed a lot. Can you give early bird discounts? What does Dayan Raskin say about giving early bird discounts to for books, for camp, for Chabad houses, for businesses?
There's a big concern about that. I have written about that.
Topic, and I wondered if you'd mind weighing in on that.
I have written the first volume of the Sefer Mishpatim. I've written about that, about early bird discount for camps, and I was concerned about that. Some people disagreed with me. That's okay. The way about the issue is that if someone is getting a discount because they've given money 3 months up front, so basically they're giving you a loan, and you're giving them a larger service for less money because you're sitting on their money for longer. So that's basically a payment for the loan. What I would advise, let's say you're running a camp or something, you give a discount for early booking, not for early payment. So whether they give the money earlier or not, it's that you're giving the discount for the early booking. There may be a deposit for that may be, but the discount is not because the money is sitting in your account.
Can we ask everyone to please mute themselves? I'm sorry. Can we ask everyone to please mute themselves? That's an interesting distinction, Dayan Raskin, you make here. So the discount then is for booking early, whether or not you give the money earlier.
Right.
So, very interesting.
Reassurance that you know how many campers you have in your camp, etc. This issue has not a new issue. It's been going. You can look in Sechemed, etc. It was in traditionally when you want to publish a sefer, you would get people who committed to buy the sefer. It was called prenumeranten, the old Yiddish word, and they would get a discount on the sefer because they put the money up front. And there's been this discussion, or a subscription to a newspaper magazine. It hasn't been printed yet, so it's a loan in a way. So this is an old discussion, but that with the camps, etc. I think that's the most straightforward approach.
And I guess as we're concluding, and maybe perhaps you have another topic, and please, if you'd like to weigh in on something specific, but in terms of the interplay between secular law, we've just finished a book of Mishpatim. We finished a book that really tells the way God wants us to handle our monetary relationships. How does that the interplay together with what happens when the law doesn't necessarily follow what halacha, or halacha doesn't follow the law? How do we as Jews, Orthodox Jews, living in a secular society, the interrelation between that when we are interacting in businesses and we're signing all these contracts, and does, if I come to you, you're the Dayan, are you going to tell me, hey, you assumed you entered into this deal based on the norms of American or your European or English law, or does Torah law trump? If you can talk a little bit about the interplay between those, that would be fascinating, I think.
Okay, I don't really deal personally with Mormonists, despite the name Dayan. I don't deal with money issues directly as much. There is a concept, and this is in many Bate Dinim, they will very much take in consideration that a business arrangement has been kind of put together with the background of the civil law, the prevailing civil law. Whether it's America or England.
After Rambam, we're always hearing whatever the local norms are, norms are. That sort of sounds like a refrain in the entire book.
That is true. That may be true. But let's say, not in the case of an agreement, but let's say damages, which I never agreed to be damaged. And now you damaged me. And then if you go to, let's say, if you damage my car, and so perhaps it's the civil law that you're going to have to make good as new. Perhaps in halacha, I'll say, you know what, your car is 10 years old, and the scratch made it was worth $1,000, now it's worth $950. So the scratch is only $50. So they're here. Now, if you would take me to court, and you'd get an award of I don't know, $5,000, actually, you have taken money from me, which is, you're not entitled to halacha, it's a gezela. So when we talk about, for example, the concept of mesira, etc., when we are invoking the civil law where we're not entitled to that payment al pi halacha, so then actually it's a form of gezela. So one should be very careful about that. But once there's a commitment, I went into a business, yes, with the background of civil law, that's true. But when it comes to other areas, it may not be the case at all. There are sometimes we'll say dina de malchus dina. If there is an award, it's not called gezela, but it's not so posh. Right, just to come back to what I have on the screen.
If there's anything else you'd like to conclude, we'd like to ask you soon to actually perform the Siyum for us as we conclude this 13th book. But if there's any closing thought or any other thought that you might find the listeners...
just to finish. Okay, just to finish off what you have on the screen, what we're seeing here is several letters of the Rebbe that writing at Savoy is actually a segula for Arichas Yomim. In a way, it's like almost, there's the whole business of not buying kids for buying equipment for an unborn baby. And here's the other way around. I'm making at Savoy. I'm all ready. Okay, the Hebrew says, okay, I'm going to give you another few years, just to show you. Okay. All right. So yes. So the last halacha. Although an apitrupus who is a guardian, who is in charge of managing the estate of the orphans, he's not obliged to give a full account. We take from the outset a trusted person. He himself, within himself, should be very particular to make sure that the accounts are accurate, to be very careful with the assets of these because these children, they are defenseless, but they have a father. The father is our Father in heaven. He's the father of these Yesomim. Shehu roichev aroves. The Eibishter is referred to as the one who rides. Aroves is in one of the names for the heavens. Shenema soilu laroichev aroves b'yud shmoi avi Yesomim v'dayan almonos elikim b'mem kodshoy. So the father of the orphans, the judge of the widows, stands to their defense, Hashem in his holy abode. And just to finish off on this idea of aroves. So we all know that aroves can refer to the willows. Aroves can also relate to the idea of Kol Yisrael arevim zelozeh, being responsible, and also the lotion of arevim lotion street. So especially when it comes to Yesomim and Almonos, so their supreme guardian is the Eibishter, and we should make every effort that our responsibility towards them should be in a sweet and a pleasant manner to somehow help them in their journey in the way that they should have to mitigate the suffering which they are. If I want to say one more thing, if I have another 2 minutes.
Please, Rabbi, please.
I want to just share, there's an organization called Arevim. I'm sure it exists in America also, where you have people join in a kind of a club of a few thousand people, and if Chas Shalom it passes away, everyone else will pay $30 or $50, whatever, and to cover. So we had the launch of this Arevim here in London about 10 years ago, and so one of the Dayanim said the following. He's explaining the trauma of a widow, and he says, a widow, she goes to the grocery at 7 o'clock, and they're sold out of bread. And she says, if my husband had been alive, there would have been bread then. He's explaining everything becomes an extra. Every pain is expanded because of the loss, and we have to be sensitive to that. And that's the Arovos being Kol Yisrael Arevim in a pleasant way to mitigate the suffering of those. And we should be, we should see as you mentioned before, and we should see only Simchas Tomit Kol Hayomim.
Amen. We immediately start the 14th book where the Rambam tells us that Sholosh mitzvahs and Stav Yisol b'Shas Knisasam La'aretz. We were commanded to observe 3 mitzvahs as soon as we enter the land of Israel, and they are L'manis Lahamelech, to appoint a king, Shnemer Seim Tasam Lachamelech. The second one is Lahachra Zara Shalom Amalek, to eradicate the seed of Amalek, Shnemer Tachitim Chasechar Amalek. And the third one is Livnis Beis HaBechira, to build the Beis HaMikdash, Shnemer L'Shichne Sidu Shuvasa Shama. When we all witness very soon the fulfillment of all these 3 mitzvahs, where we can be able to be in Yerushalayim, Yer HaKodesh, in the holy city of Jerusalem, with the Beis HaMikdash built, with the King Mashiach, with Amalek eradicated. Dayan Raskin, thank you very much for taking the time. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you all the behind-the-scenes effort that was put into creating the Siyum. You'll be able to watch it again as it's posted on the websites. God bless you. Hatzlacha. A good day, a good evening, and a good morning. Thank you very much.